You're live.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. This is a nice way to spend a morning. It's good to see everybody's faces again. Um, just a quick reminder, if you are not talking, to mute yourself so that we don't have a lot of background noise. And we are going to move on to the approval of the Communications Committee agenda and the supplemental agenda. Do I have a mover for this?
Doug Thompson.
Thank you, Doug. A seconder, please.
Charles?
Thank you, Charles. Anyone want to make any changes to either of these? Not seeing or hearing anything. All in favor? I see 11 hands. Okay, that looks good. We are moving on. Do we have any conflicts of interest? I see 11 hands up, so I did got to figure it. No, I see no hands up. Okay, great. So no conflicts of interest. On to the PowerPoint with staff.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. Typical for our communications committee, we like to start off with a PowerPoint presentation to update the committee on some of the work that's been taken care of or undertaken by staff since our last meeting in September. So we'll have our team go through some of these slides and updates before we start on the main agenda item. The first thing that we'd like to update the committee on is any operational changes or updates with respect to the work that we do and the ongoing pandemic. We're happy to report at this time that we still are not experiencing any service disruptions. We're happy with a hybrid approach to being in office and some work from home for some of our team members. I will note that most of our staff have been redeployed to the office and we are working through a hybrid approach at this time. And that's been going very well for us. But with that approach, we have been keeping to our standard operating procedures that we shared with the committee earlier in the year around precautions that we take when completing work in office and in the field. And that includes things like mask wearing and sanitization. I should also note that with respect to the office, that while we are doing our best to limit the amount of foot traffic and use of our office by the public, that our office is open, but we do ask that anyone hoping or looking to book an appointment with staff to do just that, to make an appointment and reach out in advance, just so that we can schedule that time appropriately and do contact tracing measures that we have in place. And of course, at all times, all of our updates to our programming is always available online at nation.on.ca/coronavirus. Last thought or topic with respect to COVID is we did present a draft COVID vaccination policy to our board of directors last month. There was some discussion and debate on this policy in the open session, and it was recommended that the board reconsider the policy during closed session at this month's meeting. So wanted to let you all know that that's back on the agenda for tomorrow's board meeting. It will be discussed in closed session as we do have legal counsel that's joining to offer some feedback directly to our board. So we do expect that after tomorrow, we will be able to share an updated board approved policy with respect to vaccinations. The next update that we like to start off with is to remind committee members what staff have been supporting the communications and outreach work at the authority. So obviously, since some of our staffing updates over the summer, we've been happy to have both Shannon Gutowski and Shannon Murray on the team to help work on some of our activities with respect to communications throughout the year. With their help, we've been able to do some forward planning on 75th anniversary planning, and as well as some of those design guides that we'll be talking about on the agenda. I also want to remind the committee that we still have part-time support every now and again from Cindy and Tim, who are both on the call today. I did want to give them a shout out with respect to Cindy. She certainly helped a lot with the wood auction and definitely a huge supporter, helping us get as many donations and funders as possible. So thank you to Cindy for your support on that program. And I also want to say thank you to Tim as he's made some time to head out to check all of our geocache locations and to do some maintenance activities for us. And he's got a slide in our PowerPoint to talk a bit about the geocaching program today. And before I move on, I did want to introduce Kayla Sunday, who has just recently joined our team. She's working on an Eco Canada funded partnership program with us at our office. I believe she's on the call today, and I'd like to give her a chance to introduce herself and say hello to everybody.
Hi everyone, Sigo Ziwakwego, Danun Ganalit Dios to Yungats, which is just an introduction. My name's Kayla, and I'm excited to be here, excited to meet everybody, and I don't know, if you guys have any feedback for the Healing Place or anything that you kind of think would be cool to see, I'm open to talk about anything, so let me know.
Thanks, Kayla, and thanks for taking the time to pop in this morning. Kayla, as she mentioned, is going to be supporting some of our Indigenous partnership projects that the Eastern Ontario First Nations Working Group has been working on the last few years, and one of those projects includes our work at the Healing Place. And so much of the work that Kayla hopefully will be focusing on during her contract with us is supporting some outreach and updates to that natural space. And with that, maybe I'll have Shannon Murray share some comments on the Healing Place.
Thank you. So this past month on October 14th, community partners and community members gathered at the Healing Place to collectively grieve and remember the children. So this is a property in Shanley, Ontario. There were ceremonies throughout the morning, sharing stories and remembrances as well. A children's garden was planted and culturally significant trees and shrubs were planted throughout the afternoon. And video live stream footage was captured, which you can view at the link that's posted in the PowerPoint later on at your leisure. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon.
Good morning, everybody. On Saturday, October 23rd, we hosted a community day at Tweed Conservation Area in Russell. It gave staff the opportunity to highlight tree management and restoration project details at the site, and staff also led a water quality demonstration. There will be a temporary park closure tentatively scheduled at the site for December of this year. And the event was hosted in partnership with the 2nd Russell Scouts, who were celebrating 100 years of scouting in Russell. And Mayor LaRue was also on hand to say a few words and to take part in the event, which was well attended. And of course, COVID safety measures were in place.
Good morning, everyone. So on Saturday, October 23rd, the Mintosh Park Committee hosted a community craft and yard sale at the park. So there were over 10 vendors that were there and over 200 people attended the event, with just over $700 being raised for any park upgrades coming up. The committee is planning to have another event in the next few weeks, a tree lighting ceremony at the park. If anyone is interested in attending, we can send out the details a little bit later on. We do have a meeting coming up next week to figure out all of the plans.
An update on some of our work at Oak Valley, and I'll provide an opportunity to Murray to share any comments that he'd like as well, or he can share them to the end of the presentation. But did want to let committee members know that the Oak Valley Park Pioneer committee did post an end of season park event to help clean up the park ahead of seasonal closures. And staff were on site in the week preceding and the week following to help remove some additional hazard and dead trees from the park as well to help spruce up and clean up that space. Murray, I'm not sure if you're interested in providing any comments now or if you'd like to save them for later, but I'll leave that to you.
I'll leave them for later, John.
Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to Tim to provide an update on our geocaching program.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to give everybody an update on how our geocaching program has been going. Again, for those of you who aren't quite familiar or maybe forget the details, we made a tour of the watershed in 2014, and that was fairly successful. So we followed that up 2 further years in 2016 and 2018 So we have 3 tours throughout the jurisdiction, each with 20 geocaches, and they continue to be active. People continue to be interested in them. I have a map there just to sort of show what do all these geocaches look like in terms of their distribution throughout the jurisdiction. So you can see we have reasonably good coverage throughout the jurisdictions, in particular, of course, representing our properties, our conservation areas, and other areas of interest that we wanted to highlight. Of historical interest for the second passport tour, and community lands for the 3rd tour. So again, it continues to be of interest to the public. Like everything else in society, we've had a few ups and downs and different messages as we've had different orders going around of what should you should you not do. But of course, recreation, especially passive recreation like this, is continues to be fairly encouraged and popular. Just not so much with the large gatherings that often used to go along with geocaching, where there'd be lots of friends getting together and doing group hikes and group exploring, or just even group meetings with at restaurants and such. So we continue to get lots of great reviews and comments and feedback from individual logs. You can see there in the second little graphic too, just a snapshot of the geocaching profile. So on our geocaches, we have a total of a little over 8,200 found logs. So that's sometimes that's how many people have found one of our geocaches. And again, sometimes it's a couple or a family using an account, so the number of people would actually be a bit higher. And the number underneath, a favorite point, that's sort of just where people say that this geocache is a bit more special than the average one. People can earn favorite points by finding 10 geocaches, so it represents that people think that one of our geocaches is in the top 10% for them. So again, it just shows that people continue to appreciate this. Something I was going to mention too, we seem to have a bit of a boost lately on people that are focusing on our tour, as Raisin Region, our neighbors to the southeast, have recently launched their own 2020 geocache similar passport tour or geocoin tour, and it looks like they're having some success with their tour. So it's reminding people that hey, there's another great, if they like that tour, then there's another great tour just nearby at the other conservation authority. So again, it's great to see our neighbors getting in on the fun. And actually, just one more mention too. Some of you might notice that there's 61 geocaches, and I said there's 3 tours of 20. I try to do maintenance about like a focus on maintenance twice a year. Not at all the sites, but just the sites where there's been reported problems, usually due to water damage or water getting into the logbook and that, or water getting into the container that makes for an unpleasant experience. So I try to do that in the spring and fall. The fall after we've had a busy summer of geocaching and getting ready for the winter, and then in the spring, just after the snow and flood and water has gone away, and just making sure that the geocache is ready for another busy season, although they do remain available throughout the winter. On my recent maintenance run, after we opened a new conservation area, I went in there and put in a nice South Asian geocache that welcomes people to our new conservation area, which of course is still under development. And that's all for this slide.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that update. And I'd like to remind committee members too that the development of these guides and these programs was completed with external funds. So we were very fortunate over the last few years to be able to get some grants to help create those passports and this program. And you can view those passports that do tell an interactive story as they guide you from geocache to geocache. They're available on our website at nation.on.ca/recreation. Our next slide, still with respect to recreation, is that as the seasons change, as the leaves fall off the trees, and as we expect to see some snow today, it is that time of year where we do need to prepare some of our seasonal conservation areas for winter operations and closures. And so to complete that, staff have removed all of our docks and safety and debris booms ahead of our water control structures, the last of which was completed yesterday. So we will be working on closing some of our seasonal sites beginning today and into next week. And we expect that by the end of November, all of our seasonal sites will be closed. But that doesn't mean that all of our conservation areas are closed. We do have a number of spaces that will stay open for year-round use. Spaces in Russell, like J. Henry Tweed, and Burton, also Nokomis Park in Limoges. We'll have the Warwick Forest, the Oshman Forest, the Robert Graham Forest, and the Two Creeks Forest that will also remain open throughout the year and will be winter groomed and maintained by our staff. So we're looking forward to that. I did want to provide a quick update on our community environmental grants program, especially as we're nearing the end of the year. And we do have a report on the supplemental agenda package for some additional requests. But did want to remind committee members about the success that we've seen with the program guidelines amendments. We will expect to bring a report in March that talks about what we saw in terms of uptake with the program amendment, so we can discuss how best to proceed next year. But we were very fortunate to have good, strong support from most of our municipal partners over the last 2 years. In each municipality, we were able to support tree planting projects in municipal parks and municipal recreation facilities. And as part of this program, we also made time to meet and speak with some of our municipal counterparts to help encourage them to plant trees in their parks and also to project manage some of the work in these cases. And one of our most recent success stories is with the Township of Russell. We were hired on a cost recovered basis to help supervise and coordinate the planting of about 30 large landscape trees in 6 different municipal parks in Russell. And so that was thanks to this program amendment and the work of staff that have been liaising and working with the municipalities to help plan out this work. But all to say, we're very happy to see the positive uptake, and we're even more happy to see more trees in the ground in some of our municipal parks.
Thank you, John. So as committee members will be aware of right now, this morning I sent everyone an email with our draft version of an SNC sign design guide, which has been in development. So the aim of this guidebook is to support future sign development and replacements to ensure that we have a consistent look and feel throughout all of our properties. So the guide will include a sign strategy to identify, key pieces of information such as size, material, and costing, and will ensure that all signs are complying with accessibility standards and the SNC brand design guide, which was developed in 2020. And an update is a very timely thing, considering park and property usage is at an all-time high, and visitor expectations. We're receiving a lot of visitors who are not local, so just providing that education piece and consistency across all signs is more important than ever.
As you will recall, in September, we brought forward a social media policy. So that has since been sent to for legal review. If the changes and suggestions are consistent with the intent of the policy, we will present that to the Board of Directors in the coming months. If there's any significant changes, however, staff will bring back an update to the committee for further discussion. And with respect to our South Nation website, the current website needs to be migrated to an updated platform by year end. Right now we're on Drupal 7 and that needs to be updated to Drupal 9. At the same time, staff are exploring options for website updates to help address increased traffic, server issues, accessibility, ease of access, and to support additional website tools. So that work is ongoing.
And just touching upon our fall fundraising of the virtual wood auction, wanted to just say thank you to committee members for their participation and give a special shout out to Byron for the lovely wooden snowman that was hand painted that he donated to the auction, which drew in one of the top amount of bids of all the items in the wood auction. So thank you to Byron for that. Um, a total of $2,290 was raised for 2022 Community Free Tree Campaign. So 45 participants placed 154 bids on 30 donated items from local woodworkers and artists. And the campaign surrounding the wood auction included 160 social media posts, press releases, radio and newspaper interviews, as well as some dedicated newsletters. So very happy with how the entire campaign turned out. Yes, Byron, a comment.
Are we satisfied with the financial results that we got?
Yes, I think that it was quite a good amount for the amount of donated items that we received.
Okay.
We can also take some discussion on that on the main agenda item when we discuss the wood auction proceeds. Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
All right, so as everybody knows, next year is our 75th anniversary, and we've been busy planning that. So to deliver on the work plan deliverables, and the work plan was approved by the boards at the September meeting, I believe, or perhaps October. So there is going to be a 75th anniversary guide, the commemorative 75th logo design, which we will touch on a little bit later on in the meeting, and also the 75th anniversary kickoff event, which is going to be the 75K challenge, which again we will discuss later on. And this is just a potential logo concept you see here on the screen. So we're really excited to look at the options and further narrow those down. With respect to outreach in the low water response program, the level 1 low water was terminated earlier this month on November 2nd. It was initially declared on June 4th, terminated on August 4th due to increased rain, and however, lack of rain. We had to reinstate it on September 9th. So leading up to the declaration to terminate it, October saw some good rainfall amounts to restore levels and flows. Byron.
On that issue, I know here where I live, the river has never been as high at this time of year as it has been in the past week or so, and we're getting quite a bit of precipitation. So we're we're hoping that it's not going to go up any further, because it could pose some flood problems early. Just a heads up.
No, absolutely, certainly. It's something we're looking at with our models too. And we do take the average 14-day weather forecast as an input into our watershed model so that we can predict just that. We're watching it carefully, though. We did issue a water safety statement for that last set of heavy rainfall that we received, I think, a couple of weeks ago, probably around the time of our Healing Place event. But certainly something we're paying very close attention to. Water levels are within normal, but we haven't seen them be normal in recent years. So we're watching that very closely. And if we receive more rain, like you said, Byron, we can expect that we'll have higher water levels for sure.
With respect to some media coverage, we had reporter Denny Babin from CBC Radio Canada. He did met with our team on the Ottawa River a couple of weeks ago as they're doing floodplain mapping, collecting data. So that story was in both French and English. And South Nation, as you know, is updating hazard mapping along the Ottawa River in Prescott, Russell, and the Bear Brook catchment within the city of Ottawa. And we anticipate public consultation to take place in the spring of 2022. And I can circulate that news story as well if everybody would like to have a copy of that.
So continuing a discussion on media, top social media posts since our last meeting. Throughout the month of September, toward the end of September, we had an Indigenous Partnership Achievements campaign. And on the final day, September 30th, we did a post for National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, which was our top post since our last meeting, with 277 reactions and 22 shares. We also had a very high performing post on the South Nation Wood Creations online auction, which was bilingual, with 131 reactions, 16 comments, and 83 shares, which was pretty incredible to see that kind of reach for a very important campaign for us. And we also had a very high performing post in a pollinator education video with an interview with Christina Enright, which I believe I showed the committee a draft of at maybe our second last meeting, but that post performed very well as well.
And with respect to community events, it was great to get out and to actually meet with people face to face safely, of course. So on October 27th in Cornwall, we hosted a booth at the River Symposium's Community Day. And then also we had a booth set up at the Metcalfe Fair, October 1st to October 3rd. And that was the first in-person fair South Nation has attended since the start of the pandemic. So nice to see things are slowly getting back to normal.
And a final message for our staff update this morning is just to remind committee members that Christmas is coming, holiday closure is coming as well, and we are looking to, we're planning to share notices with contractors and some of our partners next week around the dates where we expect to be completing final inspections for some of our programs and dates where we'll be closing our administrative office as well over the holidays. So those dates are on the screen. But of course, to note that our dam operators and flood duty officers will be on call throughout those office closure dates. And that brings us to the end of our update. I'll turn things back to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, John. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the Communications Committee meeting minutes of September 15th. Do we have a mover? Byron, and seconder? Doug. I think that was Doug. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes, and are there any amendments? Not seeing any. All in favor? And that appears to be carried. Thank you. So moving to a new business. You guys have been very busy from that the staff presentations, and it certainly shows in the in the action items here. Thanks for all your work. The first item is the approval of the 75th anniversary event, and just recommended that the Communications Committee approve the 75-kilometer challenge work plan as presented. And we'll get a mover and seconder, and then we'll have staff present it. Moved by Byron, seconded by Charles. Okay, Shannon?
Yes, so the 75K challenge, we're happy to continue to bring this forward. So basically, in the report, you'll see that we have some timelines with respect to when kind of when it's going to start. We have our public, excuse me, our public facing information. So basically informing the public of what it is, what they can expect from it, and how to participate. So those are some key items we needed to nail down. We're also going to have a photo contest to encourage more people to participate. And then on the internal side, what we need to do to get ready, which is basically put together a registration package, which includes a conservation area map, a letter, a thank you letter, and of course having the information so they know, so the public knows kind of what to expect. And we also are going to be looking at a t-shirt order. So we have some sizes we'll need to nail down and quantities as well. And of course the logistics of how to determine pickup and distribution of the packages as well. To promote this, we're going to have a kickoff press release and of course year-round promotion, which includes check-ins, promoting participants' photos, and promoting access to different conservation areas. And we're also going to be looking to get prizes, monthly prizes, as well as a grand prize for those who finish the 75K challenge. So looking forward to continuing to bring this together and launching it in January of next year.
Are there any questions for Shannon?
I see Tim pegging.
Oh, do you? Sorry. Okay, Tim.
My question is, just maybe you could tell us a little bit about the challenge. Is it specifically 75 kilometers of travel within conservation or South Nation conservation areas?
South Nation conservation areas and lands. Also, we're going to encourage people to utilize the South Nation River as well to get out kayaking or fishing as well. So it is, it's going to be very open-ended, basically whatever anybody can do on our lands to complete the challenge. So everything, all the recreation activities that we promote will be promoted for this.
Okay, so I'm guessing that it'll be a lot of repeat visits for people, because there's only so many times you can walk the Two Creeks Trail in a day.
Exactly. So if they want to exclusively walk the Two Creeks Trail for the entire 75, that's completely acceptable.
I like that comment, Shannon, because we want to leave it up to people's whims and desires too, right? If you walk J. Henry Tweed Conservation Area every day and you want to add up, make your 75K up throughout the year at J. Henry Tweed, no issue. But if we can encourage people to try a few different activities or make it a year-round event, a little bit of paddling, a little bit of walking, a little bit of dog walking, that all works great as well. And we'll certainly be including geocaching as an opportunity for people to accumulate their kilometers for this activity.
Okay, Charles and then Byron.
Yeah, just to say, I think La Rose Forest will be well trekked for this challenge.
Absolutely.
Byron.
Unmute.
Is there a limited time frame for this, Shannon?
No, it's year round. So, basically
Year-round.
January 1st to December 31st. And as John mentioned, it's an opportunity to get people out to experience the lands throughout the 4 seasons. So, really pushing to enjoy the conservation areas in the winter and to get outside and get active in the snow as well.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no further hands unless I'm missing someone, John.
No, it looks
All
good.
vote. Okay, all in favor? Okay, anyone opposed? It looks like it's carried.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments and feedback on this program as well. And once we have that guide developed and those details finessed, we'll share it with the committee for any final feedback before we go public next year. But we're really looking forward to having this as a signature event.
Just a question for Shannon before we move to the next one is the St. Lawrence River, because I know it's not the watershed, but it's certainly got a couple of our communities are right on it. Will that be considered as? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Make sure all our kayakers are covered.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the Ottawa, St. Lawrence, or South Nation River, or anything in between is definitely going to count towards that 75K challenge.
Okay. So the next item is the request for approval for the sign guide. Recommendation is that the Communications Committee direct staff to develop an SNC sign design guide to inform a sign strategy for SNC properties, and further that the committee provide feedback on the development of sign templates. So we did just receive this morning, so I don't anticipate that anyone had a chance to go through the pamphlet. or booklet that came in, but there were logos attached at the end. So do I have a mover? Byron, a seconder?
Doug Thompson.
Doug, thank you, Doug. Shannon?
I also had a comment on that, Peggy.
Sure.
I had a quick look through the brochure that Shannon forwarded. I was quite impressed with all of the signage and the information provided on the signs, and I think that's a good foot forward on that.
Yeah, it's well laid out. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Before we let Shannon present, I just have to go ahead and mute somebody who is calling in from a phone ending in 3169. So if that's you, I just have to mute you due to some feedback. So if you'd like to unmute yourself later, you'll have to do that manually.
Who is it? Is it a committee member?
It is, but I actually can't. I can't
Okay,
tell
I
from the
just don't want
number.
to miss someone if they want to speak.
They just joined. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Shannon?
Yes, thank you everyone, and thank you for the feedback on the guide. Some of you have already provided comments via email, and I imagine there will be some more comments as more of you have a chance to thoroughly look through the guide. So we are quite happy with the draft version of the guide that we have as of yet, and I do have some slides that I would like to share with you on the sign guide as a whole. So drivers for developing this sign guide include, as mentioned previously, increased property use. So again, lots of increased visitation from outside the SNC jurisdiction. And it just becomes increasingly important to have a consistent brand that's recognizable and educational and informative content on our signs. There are also some legislative reasons. So for public safety, an address for each property and contact information should be posted on our signage in case of emergency. As well, prohibited activities such as hunting should be posted on signage for public safety. And also another driver is accessibility of our signage. So signs on all of our properties should be adhering to best practices in accessibility, and we definitely took that into consideration in the development of this draft guide. And I'll be touching upon some of those accessibility considerations in a few slides. So in 2021, an audit was conducted which examined all of SNC's existing properties and the signs that are present there, as well as digital design files to look for consistencies and inconsistencies in signage. So we did find many inconsistencies in style just due to some signs being older, some signs kind of adhering to the SNC sign guide, which was developed last year, which were newer, but many that did not adhere to these guidelines. As well, some signs which don't adhere to current accessibility standards, and just some inconsistencies in sizing, and as well, some properties were found to kind of have what you would call sign pollution, too many signs, which we found we could likely reduce the number of signs if we created this sign guide. So to address these issues, SNC has begun the development of a sign guide draft for your review. So these guidelines will support future development of signs and ensure that we have a consistent look and feel across all of SNC's properties. So it will identify key pieces of information such as location, trail identifiers, prohibited and permitted uses, as well as cautionary notices. It will also detail sizing, coloring, design specifications, materials, and of course, accessibility in signs moving forward. So one consideration for accessibility is sight lines. So we want to ensure that all signs are visible from whatever sight line visitors may be in. So we are considering taller visitors as well as visitors who are in wheelchairs. So we want to make sure that the most key information is visible from all sight lines. As well, we are considering fonts and viewing distance. So we want to make sure, depending on the sign, if it is normally a sign that's viewed from afar, that fonts are visible from that distance, as well as signs that are viewed from closer up, such as interpretive signs. We want to make sure that those fonts are large enough and visible enough for all visitors. And a key consideration is coloring and contrast. So many visitors may have difficulty distinguishing colors, differing degrees of color blindness. So we want to ensure we have a high enough contrast between our coloring to make all of our signs, including maps, which is very critical for public safety. We want to make sure that all of these signs are accessible. So I'm just going to go over a few of the designs that we've included in the guide. So we have a picture of our current entry sign at Cass Bridge, which was taken this past year, and a concept entry sign design for Cass Bridge. And again, this new coloring adheres to contrast accessibility standards, and we're trying to make the SNC logo a bit more prominent on this version of the sign, as well as ensuring that all signs are fully bilingual. So this is one of our most recent concepts, and it's still in the works for a few tweaks, but we are happy with the direction that this sign is going. So another kind of angled cut sign, and we're trying to lay out the French and English so that it's a bit more easy to distinguish, as well as including some contact information at the bottom, as well as a thank you to partner organizations. And critically, the map we are ensuring adheres to contrast and minimal detail design standards for accessibility. And here is our new day use and boat launch sign concepts. So these are two signs that we don't have a former sign that displays this kind of information. We do have a day use sign, but this one really goes into laying out permitted and prohibited uses of each SNC property. So kind of, again, going back to those legislative concerns, ensuring that we're laying out there is no hunting on this property, there's no fire building, that kind of thing, just to ensure that we have that piece for public safety. And for the boat launch sign, we're very excited about this sign, which details how to report spills, to how to ensure that you're not transporting invasive species after your boat comes back onto your vehicle with you. It's just kind of a piece that we've been missing for a while, and we're excited to develop that sign. And cautionary sign concepts. So these are signs that we do have currently, but we've just redesigned them so that they're a bit easier to digest for the public. The French and English are laid out a bit more clearly into little chunks of information to make it a bit more accessible for people who have difficulty reading large amounts of information. As well, we've included a few more noxious plants here, and we've changed the wording actually from noxious plants to poisonous plants, just to ensure that all visitors, including young visitors, will be able to understand the wording there. And yes, Byron, open to comments now.
The signs for the Tick Smart, will they be posted on all of our properties or just the ones where we know there's ticks?
Yes, they will be posted on all of our properties.
Okay, because
And
I'm also
and
a
it,
forest steward. And the last time I went for a walk on one of our properties, I came back, I had over a dozen ticks on my legs. So,
Oh no.
yeah,
they're definitely everywhere.
and a nest or something.
Which has been a concern. This sign too, the text we developed with the SDG counties a few years ago because they too felt that it was important to sign, especially their public forests that they promote access to. So we do have an old dated sign that's at all of the SDG county forest sites and as well as our conservation areas, but we're looking to include this sign more broadly once we land on a final design concept.
I see Tim's hand is up.
Yeah, just to sort of add on that a little bit, I definitely like the idea of the tick sign and the preventative measures it talks about. It would probably be, I feel like maybe having something for people to know what do you do when you do have a tick, because it's not exactly like a mosquito that you just swat away. Especially as we get more perhaps new people to conservation areas, then they have a tick for the first time and then they panic or they don't know what to do. And we definitely want to encourage them to take the right steps to make sure that they don't end up with Lyme disease as a result of visiting our conservation area. So trying to give them the right information of what to do, even if it's just where to go for more information of next steps. I think that would be valuable to them too. Just prevention only goes so far. Once it happens, then you need to know what to do then.
Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate that feedback and definitely agree that that would be a good piece to add to that sign.
Hey, Murray?
I had a further different question, I guess, about so we have South Nation has quite a few signs. Beyond conservation areas, do we have an idea of how many signs we have, and would we be targeting replacing really all of these signs?
That's a great question. I'll take that one, Shane, if that's okay. You're right, Tim, especially for those who are forest stewards on the call, you'll be familiar with a variety of different signs through the ages that are at many of our properties. This update is focused for our conservation areas and for spaces where we're promoting public access, but we're also hoping to use these signs broadly in some of our other spaces. Largely the only other update that we will continue to work on it is signing our property boundaries for forested areas and other lands that aren't necessarily promoted as conservation areas. That's been ongoing. We did bring a report to this committee, I think in 2017 or 2018, that talked about that need, and we had broad support for that. And I expect that we'll be able to complete signing at most of those properties next year. We had identified that we could do reasonably within our budget in 5 years, and I think that 5-year end date is next year. So we're hoping to also have that completed as part of this project when we replace these signs. But there are other project signs and one-off signs that we will need to update. We're going to draft those as part of this project, Tim, and we might just update them as the sign ages out, basically.
Yeah, I think of a few places of interest that like the Alfred Bog, for example, it just has a more dated sign, and the other one that a lot of people don't know about that's in a very visible spot on the way to the casino there in Ottawa, talking with there's a nice large South Nation sign that just has the forest behind it there, and again, even if people aren't accessing it, it's a great way to advertise, hey, South Nation, this is South Nation land, and especially with limited land holdings within the city of Ottawa, it's another good spot. I guess I'll point out too the Leitrim sign of the Leitrim Boardwalk. I just wanted to take credit for the bad design of it because I did that one personally back in 2013. So at the time we weren't really taking a lot of these things into consideration, although maybe it was after this. We did have somebody with a staff member who had visual like color blindness, so we'd often call them over to look at things. I think this is before we had that, but again, I'm glad to hear that so design improvements are being made. And back then it was just, well, we'll just use red because it stands out from being green. and it makes it nice that people can orient themselves, I guess. But I guess it's hard to sometimes consider people with disabilities if you don't personally have one or it's not part of your standard practice.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Tim.
thanks for sharing that, Tim. I think it
Marie?
was Jim Hendry that helped point out some of our red lines and differences in
Right.
signs. And I remember there was a day a number of years ago where we had showed some fresh concepts to him, and we were talking about the trail map. And I remember him saying, "Well, I don't see a trail identified on this map," and it was there and it was in red, and that prompted us to make some changes. But again, many years ago.
Okay, Murray? Thanks, guys.
Thank you. I'd just like to issue a word of caution about these uh, guidelines. I found at Oak Valley, there's a strong public resistance to directional signage. You can't do this, you can. For instance, the day use sign. For over 2 years, I've played a game with somebody, I don't know who. Whoever it is comes in, turns that day use sign around, and I come down and find it turned around and I turn it back. I stopped doing that this summer after 2 years. So I think the example we have in front of us of day use, that'll just either the sign will be mutilated or turned around or even taken away. I think we've got to be very careful about how much we're laying on the public in terms of what you can and cannot do. There's just a lot of resistance in our area anyway to being too over directive and too promotional. So I think we've got to apply these guidelines with a fair amount of discretion, or we're going to antagonize a fair number of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. John?
Yeah, great comments, Murray, and definitely something we're paying close attention to. We recently had a discussion around language as well in terms of vandalism that we expect on signs. Not to say that this update is going to solicit any additional vandalism, but the regular sorts of activities that we see time and time again are, people spray painting out the word not from not allowed and those sorts of things. So we are mindful and we're trying to be careful on selecting appropriate language. Something we used to do, and I remember working on this back in 2015, we actually had taken a white board that we'd put under each property entrance sign, where we would basically put icons for prohibited and permissive uses that we wanted to share with the public, which is a requirement under several pieces of legislation. But we have seen, as Maria alluded to, year over year, people remove those signs physically or destroy them. And so that's something that's top of mind for us. We're trying to find a different approach where we can remind people what we do like to promote on the property, like things like snowshoeing and cross-country skiing, but also activities that are strictly prohibited. We definitely don't want to see ATVs on our trails, and it is a concern that we have. So it is important for us to provide this messaging, but we are very careful and cautious, and we'll be looking for your feedback on as to how we roll this out next year.
Okay. Tim's hand is up again.
Yeah, so just a quick question about day use in particular. Do we really want to do day and not define it with hours of a day? Like I think of people that maybe work 8:30 to 4:30 and they get home right now and maybe they want to walk in a conservation area after work. And does that mean they're not allowed because it's according to our sign it says daylight hours only? Does that mean they can't go in there because at 4:45 it's night?
That's something that we've been looking at, Tim, and it is a challenge, especially with the seasonal change, right? And so where times have worked on signs, especially for, park counterparts down in the States, they work very well. Don't be in the park past 10, for example. It is more challenging here in Canada where we have very short daylight hours during the winter. So we definitely wouldn't suggest including times. We've played around with some different language and are open to some feedback on, daylight use specifically, and that restriction is around public safety. Most of our facilities are not lit. There are no lights in some of our parking lots, and some of our conservation areas are very remote. And so we certainly don't want to encourage people to be accessing them after hours or when it's dark, especially from a public safety perspective. And this particular sign, while it is a replacement, it is one that's very important to us. We've seen a lot of enforcement challenges throughout the pandemic in some of our spaces with people using the parks overnight, whether to camp or to meet up or whatever. And so what we've heard from our municipal bylaw counterparts is it is very difficult to help enforce some of those rules when they're not explicitly posted. And so a sign like this really helps our partners with enforcement, and especially the OPP. If they're called to respond and there's no sign that actually says you shouldn't be here after hours, they actually can't or shouldn't be able to do anything about it. And so this sign does help them with their response, and it's something we've heard from our municipal bylaws as being a priority.
Charles?
Yeah. The only other thing that I note is in the township of Russell, for example, our playgrounds, parks, etc., are day use only, but bylaw defines that as something like 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. is night use, and outside of that is day use. In different municipalities, that could be confusing. What is day use? If the municipality considers it from 6 a.m. till 11 p.m., well, the next municipality considers it from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. That can be difficult. So there is some use for having hours of the day posted on a sign. In terms of if you have to enforce it, you actually need to have something on that sign being very specific, making it almost perfectly black and white, where you can look at your watch and say you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong.
I like those comments, Charles. I know we took a look at specifically Russell and the city of Ottawa to see what differences and approaches their enforcement team has made. And there are differences. I mean, at the end of the day, we are trying to do what's best and reasonable. And it's not to say that we're not locking gates at 11, but if there is nefarious activity or unsafe activity occurring at 2 a.m., we do want a sign or an enforcement tool to allow us to address those issues. But I think what we could do to help inform that discussion is we could just reach out to each of our municipal counterparts and see if we can get a running list on differences in times and approaches and see if that might better inform posting sometimes if it's consistent. And we can include that in the design guide as well as a point of reference.
I'm not seeing any other hands up. So can we call for a vote on that motion, which is not on my screen anymore? Where did it go?
And oh, sorry, I'll pull it up, Matt. And Madam Chair, if I could just provide a final comment on this. Sorry, I should have put that at the end. Basically, this is a guide that we're going to refine over time, and we do welcome any feedback on this. If there are any signs that are different or new, we would still aim to bring them to the committee for some discussion on a main agenda package, but we will be taking the next few weeks to refine these concepts. They are concepts, they're not final by any means. So as we get closer to near final, we will circulate them to the committee for some feedback.
So I'm hearing that this is going to be like a living document that over time, as things change and our legal requirements come up, this will be something that will be altered to reflect those changes.
That's correct. We would still look for an adoption or approval of the standards once we're happy with them and once we feel that they're consistent and reasonable with our needs. And so we may bring that to the board or ask for a committee endorsement. But at this time, it's in development and we're going to refine that. And as things change in future years, we'll want to bring that back to committee to discuss what's changed or what we need to adjust in terms of our position.
Okay, all in favor? I'm seeing lots of hands there. Look, anyone opposed? None opposed, carried. So on to the logo design. So the recommendation is that the Communications Committee receive and file the report on the 75th logo development for discussion purposes. Do I have a mover? I see it. Oh, John,
I see Jerry Couts moved, seconded by Karen.
thank you. I didn't see it. I just saw 2 hands on the side, but no names. Thanks. Discussion? Shannon, you want to lead it?
Sure, thank you very much. So, as you're aware, a logo representing the 75th anniversary is definitely on our work plan for next year. So we reached out to TD Graham and they presented us with 21 options to have a look at initially. So our team gathered to refine those, and there were a lot of concepts we liked, perhaps not entirely on their own, but if we were to take one concept and marry it with another, we would get more ideal product. So that's what we did. We met, we determined what we liked about some of our top design concepts. So we went back to TD Graham with those to further refine them. And as you'll see in the agenda, that they did come back with further refined products. So again, we're going to meet to further refine those yet again, and we are hoping to get that done in the next couple of weeks and present the kind of the top 3 design concepts to the board next month.
I vote for the one on page 23.
Yeah, I mean, let's spend some time to take a look at that, if that's okay, Madam Chair. Within the main agenda package, Shannon did include all of the original 21 first concepts that we were provided from our design firm. And like Shannon mentioned, we tried to pick out some design elements that we thought would work well. But we are looking for some feedback specifically on the slogan, logo placement, inclusion of our existing logo, for example. And so on page within your main agenda package, those final 3 concepts that Shannon was referring to are on page 37, 38, 39, and 40. And so these are getting closer to the look and feel that we're hoping for, but they each present different design element options for us to consider.
I know the ones that I'll just let other people come in here too, but the ones that I liked are the ones that use the traditional Safe Nation logo without the added kind of color, just simple and straightforward. I see we got some hands here, so I haven't got an order.
Oh, sorry, it was Tim first and then Jerry Couts second.
Okay, Tim and then Jerry. Thanks, John.
So, well, yeah, we want to celebrate 75 years, and we have our logo, and I guess it's the challenge as to how do you incorporate, how do we really want to display that? I think that I agree. I really like having our logo just to tie it in, because people seeing it, they're going to see 75 and they're not going to know. We want them to be able to quickly jump to what the 75 is relating to. Especially once you see it displayed on a hat, it makes me think we're at a 75th birthday party or something like that. Or like if I was a senior, if I was wearing a hat with 75 on it, people would probably think I'd had my 75th birthday. So I'm definitely more in favor of things that incorporate the South Nation logo that people can quickly tie. This logo is related to conservation or to South Nation. I do like that most of them have our familiar blue and green colors, but that's not necessarily enough to tie it right in. And we also want to make sure that it's anything we have is specifically to South Nation, and you can't just bring it to one of our younger conservation authorities' 75th anniversaries in a few years and say, hey, look, I'm celebrating your anniversary over here. We want it to be proudly South Nation.
Thanks, Tim. I think those are good comments and something we took into consideration compared to previous milestone logos that we've celebrated. We definitely wanted to try and find a way to keep the logo as is, or as close to as is as possible, to keep that recognition. And we don't have a 0 like we had with the 70th, so it does make it a little more challenging to incorporate numbers into a design element like this.
Jerry?
Yes, John, you mind reading out those pages of the finalists again?
Certainly, that's on page 37, 38, 39, and 40. On the preceding pages are concept and design element options that that we included just for reference in case there was anything that sparked anyone's inspiration or motivation. But the last 4 pages on that report are some of our closer to final concepts or directions that we'd like to head in.
Good.
And by no
Thank you.
means final in terms of concept.
Thank you.
Karen? Karen? Just a minute. Can I unmute Karen? Karen and then Charles.
I can't unmute her for privacy reasons, but oh, I see she's gone ahead and done that herself. Hi, Karen.
Yeah, going through them last night, I definitely concur with Tim and Peggy that the ones I liked combine the current logo with the 75, because the way I saw it, if you wore a hat that said 75, somebody would walk up to you and they wouldn't know what the 75 stood for unless they were already well knowledgeable about SNC. Now, I suppose there might be value in getting people, oh, what's the 75 for? And you could tell them about the SNC, but I think it's better off having the logo there. And even the one on page 40, I like the way they did the 75, but it needs the logo on it. And basically, all the ones with the logo, I preferred over to the straight just 75.
Charles?
Yeah, I have to concur in that there are 2 things I like to see in the hat that I'm going to buy. I'd like to see South Nation Conservation and 75. And that's very difficult to get in many cases, but on a hat, you get to see somebody wearing a hat. You glance at it, it's only a second or 2, and you've got to communicate the message in that second or 2 visual time frame, and that means you need somewhere where you get South Nation Conservation and 75. The 2 have to go together, and that's it. Putting it on a hat is very difficult. There's not a lot of room, and it's not very big, but I will buy the hat.
I wouldn't buy the baseball cap, but if they had one of those fishing caps or the Tilly types, I'd look at those.
Well, you know, not necessarily. Maybe we can actually work that. I've got a Tilly hat. You know, you could put a South Nation 75 on that. That would be great.
Yep, buttons and stickers. Don't forget the stickers that go on vehicles. There you go, Byron.
Are you guys looking for our preferences out of the ones that were presented, or?
Mostly in terms of design concepts that we like. We don't feel like our 3 updated concepts are near final. So we are looking for feedback on, you know, slogan, alterations to the logo, that sort of look and feel, those general comments that can help us refine and update those 3 concepts.
Okay.
Something to think about too is you know, we displayed in the committee package what it would look like on a ball cap, but the other medium that we're paying close attention to is what it will look like as a header on our letterhead. That is the product that is most generally used every day by staff and does have a lot of visibility. So we want to make sure that it's going to work in that print medium as well.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'm sure that you can email, if you think of something later, you can just send a note off to John or Shannon, and they'll take into consideration whatever thoughts have come forward. It has been moved and seconded. All in favor? I guess we're good. All right, opposed? And none opposed. Okay, next item. This is the wood auction, I think. Yes, it is. Recommendation is that we receive and file an update on the 2021 South Nation Wood Creations online woodware auction, and further that the committee approve allocating the funds raised from the 2021 South Nation Wood Creations online woodware auction to the 2022 community free tree giveaways. Do I have a mover? Karen, seconded by Byron. Shannon?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So as mentioned in previous slides, the SNC Wood Creations online silent auction ran this October from the 12th to the 29th. And was able to raise a total of $2,290. So we are seeking committee approval to direct these funds toward 2022 community free tree giveaways in each of SNC's member municipalities.
Okay, questions for Shannon? I don't see any. Looks like you, oh, wait, there's John's hand is.
Yeah, I
Jerry's
just wanted to provide a comment if that's okay, Madam Chair.
John
Certainly.
and then Jerry.
Thank you. Just with respect to the comments shared during our PowerPoint update at the beginning of the meeting, while we did raise less money than we raised last year for trees online silent auction, that did bring in about 77,500. We were happy with the amount that we fundraised, considering the donations that we were able to receive. So we were very pleased to see the donors and the amount of money come in. But it's something we'll be looking to for feedback for the future on how this sort of activity might be continued or transitioned, and something, of course, that we'll be looking to next year is whether or not we can safely proceed with an in-person wood auction and forest exhibition. So that's top of mind for us as we forward plan into next year and see how best we can support some of these programs. And I do want to note that the amount raised actually does help fill the gap that we expected with our free tree campaign. We do expect now, between potential municipal support and some of the funders that we've lined up to support that program, that we'll be able to deliver next spring 100% cost recovered. So this, while this amount is small, it did fill the gap that we were looking for.
Thank you, John. Jerry?
Yeah, John almost answered my question of the difference between the two auctions. That's a considerable difference. Less than 25% this time. What are you thinking of next year?
Yeah, great question. And to compare between the 2 years too, while we had a similar amount of donations, most members will recall that lots of the art that was donated last year was from local artisans that had significant dollar signs, and were able to raise much more money than some of the products that we received this year. But certainly for next year, we're working ahead to think about how best we can proceed with fall fundraisers. If we're able to proceed with a golf tournament, for example, and support a local wood auction, we may not need an online fundraiser to fill that gap. And so that's something we're taking into consideration, as we generally expect the golf tournament to bring in upwards of $8,000 to support programming. So that's top of mind as well, and especially with the level of effort involved in fundraising, we want to make sure we've got a good return on investment.
You wouldn't consider both, an auction and the golf tournament?
It really would largely depend on staff resources and commitments.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but I think if there was a way to make it work, of course we would. And if timing lines up with our 75th anniversary planning, and if we had support of some of our committee member volunteers like we had this year, it does make the job and the task much easier.
Okay, Tim and then Byron.
Yeah. So just to maybe ask a bit more about that. Well, first of all, I guess one difference for me is between wood and sort of the wall art painting. I think that people maybe it's a formal painting may be appreciated a bit more, and people can probably find more space. A lot of people say, "Oh, I have a blank wall over there that I could stick that beautiful painting on," and not everybody has. I have a nice corner of my floor over there that I could put that beautiful wood pot on, or I have an empty spot on my table I could put that beautiful wood piece on. So I think that might be a small consideration in the interest in wood art versus formal art, paintings and such. So my question is, getting back to golf tournament and such, how does the cost, including planning the golf tournament, and what what is the return on investment like that?
Well, unfortunately, I think I missed part of your question there. You cut off for a bit, but I think I got your intent, Tim, and that's to compare our ROI from, you know, an activity like the golf tournament versus an online fundraiser. We have done a bit of an assessment, just tallying up our staff hours between the two. It's very comparable, but what's different about the golf tournament is it does engage many more people. It does require support from other staff members and community partners. And so there is a larger undertaking on that sort of activity, but we also look at the benefits to the networking and engagement work that happens at those types of in-person fundraisers as well. And so we want to compare that. So certainly it's comparable with our return on investment, but there are many more benefits for in-person programming potential.
Byron and then Jerry again.
Potential, something that we could do next year, and it's quite popular in our general area, are Christmas markets, where you get local artisans to provide all of their wares. And, you know, maybe if we, I don't know, give them tables and location, that they can provide a certain percentage of whatever they take in back to SNC as a donation towards the trees. Something to think about.
Yeah, that's a great
Christmas
thought.
markets are very, very popular, and they do provide a lot of revenue.
Mm-hmm. And we saw some success even with our Macintosh Park community yard sale, while small and limited number of vendors just based on the space that was available. I mean, they still were able to raise a good amount of money to help replace some of the infrastructure at the park next year. Something we've been talking about, we haven't put together a plan or scoped this out, Byron, but something we have been thinking about is how best we could promote access to our parks or facilities during the holidays to support something like a Christmas market or a light festival, and whether some of these activities could be revenue generating. There's lots of great examples from some of our conservation authority partners in Southern Ontario. And there's definitely willing partners and willing funders that may be able to help with some of those things. So something we're looking forward to thinking about and planning out, and we welcome any feedback with respect.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's outside. A lot of people can attend, and a lot of people are normally interested in Christmas markets. So.
I see Jerry and then Cindy.
Yeah, the Christmas markets are almost oversubscribed. It's very difficult to get a table in them now, and the crowds in there are just fantastic. It's quite a good business. Perhaps the wood auction could be tied in with a local market in say the Oshman Forest or something like that. Those two would match very nicely.
Another good idea. Thanks, Jerry. Cindy?
Yeah, well, just listening to all these ideas, and then, you know, maybe we need to also look at the time of year that we're holding this event. You know, last year's auction was not just paintings, and it was any kind of art. Like there was sculpture, there was jewelry, there was all kinds of things. But another idea is, you know, if and when things open up, is trivia nights are super popular. We're hosting them in Russell, and we'd have them actually once a month. And it was, you know, there was a silent auction where things were donated, and then people played trivia, and I attended almost every one of them. And I would tell you, on average, $10,000 was raised in an evening. So it, you know, and it was even upwards of that. There was one that was like 35,000. Like, it's just phenomenal. People like to play trivia. They pay $10 a person just to participate in the trivia night. And then there's bidding that's going on. And then sometimes it would be a person in need in the community, or somebody had a fire, or, you know, they had an illness, and that people would just come together for this. So you know, we're missing that here, and hopefully if anything like that ever comes on, I'm sure the organizer would do a trivia night for South Nation.
Does that involve big crowds in an enclosed area though, Cindy?
Yeah, well, that's why I said if and when things open up. I mean, hopefully someday we'll be back to normal. But yes, it was in the arena. They were held at the Russell Arena upstairs, and I would say on average, you had 5 or 6 on your team, and there was probably, gosh, I'm trying to think, at least 30 tables, maybe more. So in the arena, yeah. So, I mean, that would have to be, you know, when restrictions are lifted. Just an idea.
Thanks, Cindy. I don't think I see any other hands up. It's been some good feedback for looking forward. Do we have anyone else wanting to comment? Not seeing any. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Not seeing any. It's carried. The next item is the meeting schedule for 2022. And recommendation is that Communications Committee approve the 2022 Communications Committee meeting schedule as presented. So we're looking at Thursday, March 3rd, Wednesday, June 8th, Wednesday, September 7th, and Wednesday, November 9th. John, do you want to? Oh, sorry, I need a mover and seconder. My
Yeah,
bad.
that's okay. Yep.
Moved by John, Cindy, and Karen. I saw Cindy.
Sure. So just some quick discussion before we vote. We are looking for some feedback. So if there's any dates or scheduling conflicts that you might have that you want to share with the group now, we can adjust those dates. There were a few members that sent in some preferences already. So we've gone ahead and suggested these dates. These dates are consistent with the schedule we had this year. Does provide enough time in a given month where we might be able to get our minutes to the board of directors in the same month. So we took that into account with the dates that we chose. And so you'll see if you compare this, the proposed schedule for next year versus this year, it does look like they're a few weeks earlier. That just has to do with where a few Thursdays landed as the first day of the month. And so that's why we were proposing to move those ahead. But we welcome feedback. I know board member Bill often has some scheduling conflicts on Wednesday, so we welcome any suggestions on that. And I did want to point out before we ask for feedback that we still have the ability to host additional meetings if we need them. I'm thinking ahead to things like the Maple Education Program. If there's a need for us to have a discussion in January and February around Maple activities or how best we might need to proceed with that, we might want to pull together a quick meeting or an electronic meeting. Same thing goes with respect to our community environmental grants. If there's applications we need to review, we do have the ability to call additional meetings to discuss those.
Thanks, John. Any questions for John or comments? All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? It would appear that that is carried.
Thank you.
On to the supplemental agenda.
This is a good point too, Madam Chair. I didn't bring up the concept or the idea that we may need a washroom break. So I do put it to you or to the committee if there's interest. This might be a good time.
I was thinking about it and I thought, oh, it looks like we only have 2 more items. We need to, but is it, I'll just, if anyone needs to take a break, we can do so now for about 5 minutes, but it looks like we are fairly close to. I also, yeah, Shannon?
I think she was just suggesting she might need a break.
Okay, okay, we'll come back then. if everyone's good, it's 10:30 now roughly, so come back about 10:35, 10:40. Which do you want, 5 or 10? 5? Cindy said, I'm seeing 5.
Everyone's saying
Okay,
5, yeah.
perfect. Okay, 10. So we'll be back here at 10:35.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Shannon Murray.
Yes.
Do you know where my snowman went?
That is a good question. I forget the name of the person who thought it. Kelsey actually delivered the snowman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it went to Limoges.
Limoges.
Yep.
Huh. I see. Okay. Just curious, you know.
Have we got everybody back now? I'm hearing some background noise. Not sure where that's coming from.
I think it was addressed. I think it might have been off of Byron's mic. There's a few people with their videos still off, Madam Chair, but there's only a couple. Seeing most videos turned back on now.
Okay. I have lost my list of participants. Where did it go? Where did they go? There, they're back now. Okay, so looks like we have everyone.
Yeah, we just lost Bill there, but hopefully he'll be back in a few moments. I'll advance to the next agenda item.
Okay. So we're into the supplemental agenda. And the first is a recommendation that the Communications Committee recommends the Board of Directors approve approval of the community environmental grants in the amount of $300 each to St. Paul's Presbyterian Church and L'École Saint-Viateur. I just am not the French person here, so I apologize. And the speaker on this is Kelsey.
All right. Sorry, do we want to just grab a mover and a seconder
sorry, thank
before
you.
we?
See, that
No,
always
that's okay.
happens. We take a break and then I forget what I'm doing. There you go. Mover, please. My
Got
goodness.
lost autumn, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
yeah,
I
moved
think
by Karen and then seconded by Byron. Does that work for everybody? For some reason, I could not see hands. Just, I don't, must have the screens not set right or something. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Go ahead, Kelsey.
All right. So since our last meeting, we've had two requests for community environmental grants. The first comes from St. Paul's Presbyterian Church. So they are working with Christina Enright of the Butterfly Way Project, and they're looking to create a new public access pollinator garden on their grounds at the church in Winchester. And so the funding from this grant, if awarded, will help go towards the purchasing of shrubs, the retrofitting of the storage shed to create the monarch habitat, as well as signage for the grounds. And then our second grant comes from L'École Saint-Viateur in Limoges. So they are an eco school who is looking to plant some more trees in the schoolyard. Just along the fence line, there is a new sports facility going in right beside the school. And there have been trees taken down for that project. So they're just looking to plant some more trees on their schoolyard between the two facilities.
Okay, questions and comments?
I'll note, Madam Chair, there is a map for the first request on page 5 of the supplemental agenda package that shows the proposed area for the garden and the public access. As you'll recall, we want to make sure that applicants are ensuring that the trees that are going to be planted to this program are publicly accessible. So you'll see a map on page 5 of your package. And on page 6, that letter is in French, but does detail some of the things that Kelsey identified. And that number is Bill rejoining us. But yeah, on page number 6, it does identify the public access and the deforestation that had occurred to support that community building.
Questions and comments? Wow, we usually have lots of questions and comments.
Yeah, no, both look good.
That I'm not seeing. None. Okay. All in favor? Oh, wait, no. Yeah, okay, that's the vote. All right. Okay, thanks, guys. Anyone opposed? I don't see anyone opposed. It's almost like there's a sound of a fax machine or something in the background every once in a while. I don't know what
That is, I think, from Bill's telephone. Don't want to signal pass
Poor
Sheriff
Bill.
Snorrell out, but yes.
Okay, so that has carried.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the seeing those when they're done, especially the butterfly, the
Mhm.
school. Anyway, all right, so the update from Angela, is she still here for the Conservation Authorities Act? Is Angela gonna do that?
Yeah, we
Yes.
have her on the line and she'll present a brief discussion. But before we do that, I did want to go ahead and mute Bill. Sorry, I'm just going to go ahead and mute you, Bill. So if you do want to speak, you will have to press *6 or *9 on your device.
Okay. Angela?
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me fine?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So this morning, John had asked, and as we were preparing for the meetings, the upcoming meetings, the stakeholder committee meetings, I just wanted to come and provide some updates with respect to the Conservation Authorities Act regulations that have been recently released, and to encourage all committee members as things go forward to continue to, have positive contributions and things to say about the work of conservation authorities, as well as it's important in our local communities. First slide, please. Um, I don't want to go in too much detail. I'd rather just do a lot of speaking, but I did just put this down as the background of information of the different changes that have happened through the Conservation Authorities Act. So there's been a number of legislative amendments. Suffice it to say, it all ended and accumulated in the release of regulations that came out at the end of October. Next slide. Bill 229 was the first start of regulations that dropped in February of 2021. Next slide. Those regulations included the discussion, and I'm just doing these as a reminder because I know that these there's been a lot of changes and a lot of amendments, but those regulations dealt with a couple of things. They required conservation authorities have at least 70% of their appointees be elected officials. And it just required as well that if a conservation authority was going to do otherwise, or a municipality was going to appoint otherwise, that they would have to ask for special permission from the minister to do so. However, all of the current public serving representatives were allowed to complete their terms. So this piece, while it's already in effect, doesn't affect any of our current sitting board members. What it does affect for our particular board is we have 1 or 2 citizen appointees, and where in the city of Ottawa, for example, we would have 2 citizen appointees and 2 elected officials. We would simply require the permission of the minister if we wanted to continue that way. And it wouldn't be the Conservation Authority that requires the permission, but actually the municipality that would seek that permission. Next slide. Those appointments are, fairly political in nature. The process seems fairly political in nature. So there's not a real guideline for how that would be done. But as I mentioned, it would be the different member municipalities and or counties making the representations that would have to seek the permission from the minister. Next slide. The other thing that the legislation contemplated earlier in the year was that we had to forward any information about our conservation authority to the minister. And simply put, we did send our order in council to the minister. And what the order in council for South Nation does is basically amends our number of required board members from all of the municipalities down to a more manageable number that makes more sense on representation by population. So that was forwarded to the minister and no further action was required. And it's also published on our website from this point forward. Next slide, please. The minister also made amendments that required that both our chair position and our vice chair position serve a 1-year term, and that those folks could not serve more than 2 consecutive terms. However, there is still that permissible application there where if you want to do otherwise, you would simply make application or send a letter to the Minister of Conservation, Environment and Parks. for amendments within. Our administrative bylaws do support that, but if we wanted to do a continuation, for example, because our current situation with COVID is we have a little bit of a year and a half type of overlap. That's a letter that I could write to the minister, and I do think that said request would be granted as it currently sits. Next slide. The agricultural representative, the minister can appoint without voting powers, an agricultural representative to our board of directors. Now, it says here that no action is required and it's a minister's discretion. I do, however, recently have a request from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks that asks us our current rates of pay for all board members, so that if they were to do an agricultural appointment, what they would be required to do. I think the only part about that that is, misses sort of the point is not all conservation authorities have the working groups and committees that we have. And I think too, where someone, for example, like Jackie Pemberton has been on committees and she's elected as chair, the process that the minister what is to follow to make these appointments, it should be in line and step with what the existing federations of agriculture, etc., have in place with the conservation authority. So I will make a copy of that letter, sort of send that when I respond to the minister's office. I will respond with a CC to the chair of the Clean Water Committee, as well as some of the local people I think should be aware that this is what the minister is considering, because I think it should, as I said, be in lockstep with what the local federations of agriculture would wish. Next slide. The account, as of February, we had to follow generally accepted accounting principles, and that's of course no issue. We follow generally accepted accounting principles. Next slide. A number of items are required to be posted on the website, and those items are posted on our website. Next slide. This piece here talks about receiving landowner consent to enter for the purpose of projects, and we would never, go onto a landowner's property without consent in advance. A few limited circumstances to that, but even with our regulations, it's not our process to not contact the landowner first. We always contact the landowner before going on their property. Next slide. So then there was a bunch of regulatory pieces that came out, which sort of accumulated in a discussion paper that the minister released back in the summer or late spring, early summer of this year. And the results of public consultation have not directly been released, but the minister has said they received over 400 submissions on their discussion paper. Next slide. We've been doing on a monthly basis presentations to our board of directors on the programs and services that we offer, to explain basically if there's anything in here that the current government would consider to be non-core. There really isn't much that we do, but of course, while communications supports what they're calling core programs, and we can still deliver education programs and so forth as long as they're revenue generating, there are some challenges with that piece, and I do encourage all of you where, being active in our communities has value. If there's an opportunity to provide comments, that you keep those things in discussion. The other thing will be things like stewardship grants, and a lot of those are already taken care of with partner agreements. But just if there's ever a call to action, we won't hesitate to send it to all of our committee members. So just always to be on the lookout if we find ourselves in a challenging situation, which currently we don't anticipate. Next slide. We're at the time tomorrow, we're doing our budget, our draft budget for 2022, and sharing that information with the member municipalities. And this year we will be circulating that budget a little bit longer to the member municipalities if they have any comments. Just one out of a point of curiosity for the municipalities, as well as just a genuine sort of feedback loop so that we can make sure that our programs and services are responding to the needs of those municipalities. Next slide. And that's it for me, and I'm here to take any questions that you may have about this. There's a number of upcoming committee meetings with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, etc. So there's always opportunities to provide feedback, and I will, through you, Madam Chair, take questions.
I see Charles has a question.
Yes, Angela, you mentioned that the minister may appoint an agricultural sector. What minister is that makes that appointment?
It would actually be the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks. And we would hope, of course, they would do that in consultation with the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Affairs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Angela? Quiet group. Wow. Not seeing any other questions, Angela.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just a matter of, it's a lot of, for streamlining and reducing red tape, it adds a lot of additional additional paperwork, unfortunately, but that's okay. We want to be accountable, so there's no, there's no issue that way.
That is, I see Tim's hand is now up.
Yeah, my question is, with these changes that we seem to have been able to accept pretty somewhat easily or without major changes to our programming, is there anything, which part has been the most challenging or most concerning for our future operation?
Yeah, I think we're going to see the direct implementation consequences for, we'll start discussing it in the 2023 budget, but definitely see implementation in the 2024 budget. So that's going to be up to, the municipalities for the different programs and services that they see as important and things that we see as necessary, and those areas that municipalities, whether because of fiscal constraint or whether they may feel a program has overlap and duplication with some of the things that they're offering. So it really will be important for us to have good communications throughout this so that it can inform everybody's decision as we move forward on where in our budget there are items that people feel are outside of the scope of what we should be doing or providing. But as I've said throughout this process, we're a CA that owns a lot of land. So it's a very big land base. So it's a very geographically, it's a very large watershed. And it's also a watershed that I think it has a lot of, it has a lot of political complexity. It has a lot of different challenges between rural and urban, et cetera. There's a lot in this watershed. So, like I said, even just in doing our natural hazards, we have kilometers of floodplain that still have to be mapped. We have a very large landholding base, and all the things that we're discussing today is part of core programming anyhow, the implementation of those property standards, et cetera. So these are not all bad things and can refocus the authority, I think, to some extent on things that we could have done better over a number of years. So I would say in this watershed, there's no need. We're geographically large and complex, and so I don't see us running out of projects of essential work for a very, very long time. But I mean, something to remain active on, I think, is the stewardship programs and their importance and how those, have great, because I was even reading, people talk about climate change and things, and they say, well, the CAs are in charge of water. But as we go forward, to get people to better understand what we do in terms of planting trees and how that sequesters carbon and how that all really does have an impact on the local environment. It's great when someone comes in and promises the sun, moon, and stars for changing the framework within which we can calculate carbon and credits and all those things. But we're an organization that, as we have all discussed, has been around 75 years next year. So we have a proven track record of delivering on those programs and services, and we know what it takes to deliver those programs and services year in and year out. So that's probably where I'm going to need your support most, is to say, look, this is really the time, especially as we discuss climate change, where we really need that local implementation organization to be continuing to plant trees and to do the types of ecological work that we do for all of the local municipalities. And that's probably the main area, Tim. Like that's the area where people don't always seem to connect all of the work we do to its importance on some of those key issues on the go forward.
Thank you, Angela. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Great. Looking forward to seeing how this all turns out in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so it's important to touch in from time to time, right? And to make sure that we, your questions are always good too, because I think that, I certainly read that agricultural appointment as important, but I'm glad to sort of rehear those questions from the committee because it, to me, it shouldn't be done by people in Toronto. They should respect the local process, and particularly these processes have been in place in an agricultural watershed like ours since the beginning of its formation, whenever farmers were threatening to blow up the Chesterville Dam. So we don't need a process to assure that, we understand the concerns of the agricultural community, I think.
I think it's important too that everyone recognize the involvement, the level of involvement that you've had in all of this for our conservation authority, and how, working and showing how.
We may have lost Peggy.
Peggy, we just lost you for a second in the middle of your update.
Oh, well, then I don't. Just thanks to Angela for all her work in making sure that we're noticed in all of this.
Thanks.
Okay, any other comments before we move on? Okay, do we need a motion to adjourn? I guess, is that where we're at? No, community engagement roundtable discussions. Thanks for putting that up there. That's I'm just going to go down the list and if we can sort of combine these the engagement activities and your recommendations for friends, and we'll start with Byron. I'm going alphabetically down the list.
Okay, directed to John. Any further activities on our groomed ski trail with the township, John? Any updates?
Yeah, great comment, Byron. And his question is with respect to the Alfred Plantagenet. We talked a bit about our winter recreational planning and some of the work that we've done in partnership for municipalities in terms of grooming some winter trails, like the Russell Recreational Trail, for example. Shannon and I actually did have a chance to meet with some staff at the municipality on Monday of this week. And the recreation team is looking at a potential solution. They too, Byron, share your concern that there's a bit of a lack of spaces within the municipality for people to access winter trails in Alfred Plantagenet. And so they're working right now. They just sent us some maps, and we're going to do a follow-up meeting next week to talk a bit about how they'd like to see it roll out. But they are looking at developing some winter trails at the college campus in town. That they're looking at right now. There's some trails on the campus that's now partially owned by the municipality. And so they're looking at ways to help winter groom that and make it available for skiing and snowshoeing throughout the winter as a first step.
Right.
So hopefully we'll be able to update you guys soon. And I think once we have that meeting with Ken St. Denis from the municipality, that we'll share a message with you, Byron, to see if you have any comments.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Charles?
No comment.
Doug?
I will say though, Charles, we had a good discussion before the meeting started about the climate change discussion at the United Counties Prescott Russell council meeting last week, and about some next steps on that. So I'm sure we'll be following up with you as we get close to your presentation with Lisa Deacon.
Thank you.
Jerry?
No, nothing.
Karen?
Nothing here.
Murray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just report first on the Oak Valley Pioneer Park. South Nation staff removed a lot of dead trees, including our last two very large size elm trees, which died off very quickly. We are planting additional trees seedlings for next year. We're going to look at some more Carolinian type trees, recognizing the arrival of climate change. So an outcome of all the activity by South Nation staff, removing trees chewed up a lot of the driveway around the property. So we received several loads of gravel. So it's much better for people driving in now. They don't get bogged down in some low spots. So overall, it was quite a positive experience, and it'll be next summer before I look to see if there are any more dead or dying pine trees. I think that's the main things I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Cindy?
Sorry, I didn't know I was next. No, I don't really have a whole lot. Just that I just wanted to mention that how much I enjoyed the event at the Healing Place, and also with the scouts and things like that. And I'm really hoping that we incorporate the Healing Place. I spoke to Shannon and Kelsey. Shannon's and Kelsey about this, that I really hope we incorporate that place into our 75th celebrations, because I just think it's such a special place, and I'd like us to have some Indigenous component in our celebrations of 75 years. I think it's really important, and just the education aspect, and the speakers that we had there that day. So whether we could have a meetup there as one day or something like that, that was just a suggestion for next year. And I enjoyed the maintenance and the tree planting and different things I was able to participate in. So looking forward to getting out there again, and hopefully the sugar bush will happen this spring if possible. That would be nice. So thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Tim?
I was just gonna share from last week. I went for a walk in the Two Creeks Conservation Area, and as our reports have always indicated, it's a very popular spot. There's lots of cars in the parking lot, and encountered a few people in the trails. And I ended up walking along with a middle-aged couple, and they were really enjoying the conservation area. They were visiting from Ottawa that day. They'd seen the signs on the highway, and they decided that was the day they're going to come down and visit the conservation area. So again, just another reminder that the trails are very well used and well enjoyed, and not necessarily just by the locals.
Great, thanks, Tim.
It was nice to see those photos, Tim, and I felt especially bad because the week prior we had actually had an accident in the parking lot where one of our visitors had backed his truck into our sign at the property and took it down completely. So I was sad to hear that the sign wasn't there during your visit, but that is something that, of course, that we'll be looking to replace as we roll out this sign strategy.
Who's on the phone? Is it Bill? That's
correct.
Okay, Bill?
Bill, if you have any comments to share with the committee, just recall that I muted you, so you'll need to unmute yourself on your device. Thanks.
It doesn't look like he's going to be able to share anything.
He did unmute, and it did say he was speaking, but I didn't hear anything.
Yeah, I just got a little bit of feedback, and then now he's unmuted again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
I'm sorry about that. I've been having problems all morning. I don't have anything much to report, except I'm really pleased with hearing the amount of discussion that went on this morning, and I was able to, as was Peggy, as was a couple of you, to attend the Shanley event, and I like that comment about making sure we include something of that in our 75th. And I really appreciated hearing Angela's comments, although I couldn't see them. So I'm on my handheld at the moment, and it's just by phone. So thank you. And it's not telling me when I'm muted or unmuted. So I'm having some kind of a problem that I'll get resolved. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, now, I'm not seeing any of their hands.
Yeah, I think you got everyone.
I think I got
Sure.
everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I guess that concludes our today's meeting, and the next meeting is set for March 3rd, 2022, and that will be the joint meeting, correct?
Yeah, hopefully. And that'll depend on the COVID restrictions that are in place at that time. And if it's possible to do this in person, definitely for the joint meeting. That's our preference. But we'll update members as the months roll on.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. We need an adjournment for today's meeting. To be
Merry
adjourned at
Christmas.
5. That's Cindy making that adjournment, and Charles. And don't need a vote, but Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry
And,
Christmas.
we won't be able to get together over the holidays, but have a good one and keep safe.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.